The Atlanta Braves are about to play 3 games in a minor league park, and then they're going to draft a bunch of minor leaguers. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Tuesday, July 8th. Your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, on Twitter, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. Later in the show, I want to talk about not specifics, but more general about the draft. What I'm going to be looking for Atlanta to do, because they need a significant recomposition of their minor league system. I went into a ton of depth, almost 2,000 words, on today's newsletter. We're going to touch it briefly here on the show, but the full content of that, again, bravestoday.com. Feel free to subscribe, by the way, while you're there. Free or paid, helps us out a ton with everything we're doing over here. So the Braves are heading to Sacramento for 3 games versus the Athletics. And it's gonna be really weird because obviously, Atlanta's 8-2 in their last 10 games. They are reeling. We've talked about this yesterday, about how they had 0 or 1 runs in like 6 of those 8 losses. Things are not great for the Braves right now. The Athletics are 4-6 in their last 10 games, but some of their wins, they beat the Giants 11-2. They beat the Yankees 7-0. Like, this is a team that can put up runs. And in just a few minutes, we're going to get to the pitching matchups and what to expect from Jeffrey Springs, who starts game 1 tonight, the lefty, and all of that. This is going to be a weird one for the Atlanta Braves. Even weirder than when they went to Tampa Bay to take on the Rays in Steinbrenner Field, which is the spring training home of the New York Yankees. Because the thing they're going to have to deal with here is going to be the heat. Like, the high on Thursday in Sacramento is 100 degrees for the series finale. When they kick off at around, I think it's going to be around 10 p.m. Eastern time. So you're looking at, 7 o'clock Pacific. It's still going to be upper 90s when they play. Now it's a dry heat, 30% humidity and things like that. But they have to play so many games at night because it's so incredibly hot in Sacramento. And obviously, this is a minor league park. Like, when Atlanta went to Tampa Bay, they were in a minor league park. Technically a spring training park. It's also used for the single A Tampa Tarpons. But it was earlier in the year when the weather wasn't as bad. The weather is going to be, even for an Atlanta team that is used to playing in the heat of the South, this is still going to be a factor. You may have to rotate the catchers a little more heavily. One game, the other the second game, back to the first guy for game 3 because of the heat. But there's also unique challenges that you get in Sacramento that you don't really get anywhere else. The most frustrating thing about this ballpark is it plays dramatically different at nighttime versus daytime. Like, when you're looking at the park factors, during the day, it's one of the hardest ballparks to hit a home run in. The park factor is 86 this season, which means you are roughly, think of it as roughly 14% less likely to get a home run there than anywhere else. Whereas some ballparks, Dodger Stadium, George Steinbrenner Field, it's a launching pad. Balls are going out. At nighttime, this park all of a sudden plays a little differently. And it's one of the most homer-prone parks in baseball. It's top 5. It's like the Dodgers, Dodger Stadium's up there. Camden Yards is up there. Rogers Center for Toronto is up there. Citizens Bank Park for Philly is up there. And then Sutter Health Park is one of the most homer-prone ballparks at nighttime. So just the park dimensions are going to be weird. Okay? 330 to left, 325 to right, 403 to center, which is pretty similar to Truist, honestly. Truist is 400 to center, 335 to left, 325 to right. So it's not that much different from Truist as far as the actual playing surface. Like, they use natural grass too. The dimensions are roughly the same. But the environment, right? The dry heat, the ball is going to fly farther. You run into situations of the wind. You don't have nearly as much grandstand built up around you, so you have to deal with that. And then it's the facilities. And a lot of these A's pitchers seem to do worse at home than on the road. Tonight, starter Jeffrey Springs, who we're going to get to in a few minutes, he has a 4.73 ERA at home and a 3.61 on the road. Right? The batting averages aren't that much different, but the home runs, he has the same number of home runs allowed in each, whether home versus away, despite only starting 7 games at home and 11 games on the road. It's that home run effect. You're going to see some fly balls. You're going to see some home run balls to this series. So you have to think like, okay, you want guys who can keep the ball down. You hope Bryce Elder's sinker is working, things like that. But there's other annoying factors as well, like the clubhouse. The clubhouse is for the teams. They built it out beyond the outfield because there wasn't room to attach it to the dugouts. And every single major league park, like MLB Stadium, the clubhouse is attached to the dugout. So the Braves, the first entry into the dugout, if you're walking from home plate to the first base side, you go down those stairs right there, the first set of stairs. And the dugout's here, but then you can keep going straight and you hit the tunnel where they have the hitting cages, the pitching machines, all of that stuff. And then you take a turn and you end up in the clubhouse. So you can walk down to the clubhouse between innings. A lot of starting pitchers, and I don't know for a fact which Braves guys do this. Media doesn't have access to the clubhouse during the game. There's like a certain time period before the game starts when all the media has to clear and you can't get back in until a certain time after, usually after interviews are done in the interview room. But if you're going to be, let's say you're going to be a pinch hitter, you're on the bench, you're going to be a pinch hitter, and you're likely to face a lefty, you can pop right to the tunnel there attached to the clubhouse and attached to the dugout, hop on a pitching machine, program it with whatever that lefty is going to be throwing, and see his pitches before you go face him. A starting pitcher can run back in the clubhouse. They can, grab a drink. They can grab a snack, whatever they want to do. They can just be in the air conditioning between innings, whatever they want. You can't do that in Sacramento. And there's some guys that need that more than others. Luis Severino is the biggest story of this here. He's their big offseason acquisition. He signed, I believe it was like the largest free agent contract the A's have given out, like ever. He's making $20 million this year. He's making $25 next year and a $22 million player option for 2027 that it feels like he's going to opt out of. Because he's gone on the record and saying that the setup of this ballpark, with the clubhouse being detached, where you have to go through the outfield to get to it, all of that stuff, he does not perform well there. And the stats bear that out. On the road, he's 2-2 in 8 starts with a 3.04 ERA. At home, he's 0-8 with a 7.04 ERA. It is 4 runs per 9 innings worse at home. The batting average he's allowed on the road, 219 with a 624 OPS. The batting average at home, 298 with an 829 OPS. 205 points worse on OPS. To the point, and he's been so vocal about it, where I wonder if they're going to try to move him. Like, I would not be opposed to the Braves leaving Sacramento with Luis Severino on the roster, because you would have him for 26, and maybe you could work out something for 27 as well. Again, I talked about this yesterday. I don't think any moves you make should be designed with only 25 in mind. If you acquire anybody, they've got to have control for at least 26, if not multiple seasons. That's just, you're not doing it this year. And I think we all know, barring the just most fantastic late season surge that baseball's ever seen, you're not going to do it. I know there's people who still believe, and I Trust me, I will absolutely root for them if they do it, and I'll break down all the things that went differently for them to start making it work. It just feels like it's not going to happen. But this is not going to be an easy place to play. It's just, the baseball players are so much creatures of habit. They like to do the same thing, within reason, every single day. And we've heard guys talk about even changing game times sometimes messes with them. Like, guys develop their routines for a normal night game. They develop routines for a day game. It's different at home and on the road, obviously, because like a night game on the road, you're taking BP earlier, all that kind of stuff. A day game, you're not taking BP at all. These guys have routines and they stick to them really, really tightly. Playing in Sacramento messes with all of that because everything is cramped, everything is smaller. You don't have the same amenities. You have a long way to go to the clubhouse. Like, this team is going to feel different. And they're not going to just feel different because they never play good when they go out west and they're playing so late at night. They're going to play differently because they're under different conditions that they have not been under in a long time. And I honestly don't know what to expect in this series. I think the A's lineup can be dangerous. The A's lineup can also be terrible. It's kind of like the Braves lineup. They can be fantastic. They can be terrible. I do think Atlanta's better defensively. But you know what? We'll get into all that. Let's break down the A's offense and tonight's starter, Jeffrey Springs. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby talking about tonight's series opener versus the Sacramento Athletics. They don't call themselves the Sacramento Athletics. They're just the Athletics. Feels like a misstep to me, but that's just me. Reminder, later, we're going to be talking about this draft and what Atlanta needs to do differently. And that all ties back to an article from this morning over on bravestoday.com on the newsletter about Atlanta's farm system and how they need to do some recomposition of that farm system. So stay tuned for that. That's in the third segment. But tonight's starter, Jeffrey Springs, Atlanta has never faced him as a starter. Okay? He's thrown 97 innings this year. He's 6-6 with a 4.07 ERA. Last year, he was 2-2 with a 3.27 ERA, but he only threw 33 innings in the majors. 2023, he was 2-0 with an 0.56 ERA, but he threw 16 innings. So, like, he's never faced Atlanta as a starter. In his last 7 games, he's 1-2 with a 3.76 ERA. And unlike some of these guys, he's not been terrible at home. Now, he's made 2 starts at home out of his last 7. One of them was 7 1/3 with 3 hits and 1 run versus Cleveland. I don't think that's a great offense anyway. One of them was 4 runs, 3 earned on 6 innings against Philly and a no decision. But he also, on the road in Toronto, got tagged for 6 runs on 6 hits and 6 walks in 2 innings. So on paper, big caveat with this Braves offense, right? On paper, Jeffrey Springs is a guy that you can get to. Now, not many Braves have seen him. Matt Olson has, I think it's 7 total at-bats against Jeffrey Springs. He is 1 for 7 with a double, and that was in 2021. There's just not a lot of experience on this roster against Jeffrey Springs. He's also a lefty. I feel like this Braves team has struggled with lefties in some way, in certain ways this year. Now, what Jeffrey Springs does, this is going to be really interesting because he's really not a good fit for this ballpark at night. Remember, I said that this ballpark is one of the most homer-prone ballparks at nighttime. And like that is pretty evenly spread. Righties, it's like top 8 for homers. Lefties, it's like top 3 for homers. So they are non-denominational. They're not discriminating against lefties or righties when it comes to hitting home runs in this ballpark. Everybody can do it. But Jeffrey Springs is a fly ball pitcher. He has a 31.5% ground ball rate this year. It is 8th percentile in baseball. He is not good at keeping the ball on the ground. He's throwing very soft. His four-seam fastball averages 90.5 miles an hour. It is one of the slowest in baseball, 7th percentile. He doesn't give up a ton of hard hits. It's like a 79th percentile, 35.9%. But when he does give up hard hits, they're probably barrels. It's a below average barrel rate because he gives up a bunch of fly balls. The average exit velocity against him is like 88 miles an hour, which is 75th percentile. But again, when somebody does get one, they get one. Okay? He's allowing a barrel like every 6.1 plate appearances, which is not great. And when you look at the total like home runs he's given up, it's 16 home runs this season in 18 starts. As you can imagine, 8 of those are in his 7 home starts. So like it feels like you should. Not always a guarantee with this Braves offense in 2025, but it feels like you should be good for a homer off of Jeffrey Springs. Now, as far as what he's actually doing to these different guys, he's not perfectly rigid, but he's very rigid on this Arsenal platoon stuff. So, for a righty, 4-seamer, changeup, slider. Okay? It's like 530 4-seamers, 418 changeups, 252 sliders. So 4-seamer changeup are pretty high up there. Sliders in a class of its own. And then it's like 50 cutters and 16 sweepers. So it's really going to be a 3-pitch guy, but he could fool you now and again with a 3rd pitch, right? He could fool, like, he's going to get some of the 3-pitch guy, but he could fool you with a cutter or a sweeper as a 4th pitch. Sorry. Lefties, completely different story. He leads with the slider to lefties. Almost equal, but above the 4-seam usage. And then after that, his sweeper is the 3rd pitch, which is really weird if you think about it, because the whole thing behind a sweeper, I really don't know why he throws it that much to righties at all. It's designed to be same-handedness batters. If you think about it, if you're a lefty, he's a lefty, he's throwing it and it's breaking away from you into the opposing batter's box. It's also really good at getting weak contact, though, because it's going to move laterally off of your barrel down to like the end of the bat or whatever. That's one of the keys. The slugging on that sweeper is a 182 slug. Like, he doesn't have another pitch with a batting average that low. The sweeper's the real weapon of this arsenal, and he rarely uses it. He's thrown exactly 7 changeups to lefties out of 425. Lefty-lefty changeups aren't really a thing. He's thrown 7 cutters out of 61 thrown to lefties, because a lefty cutter is just a kind of a dumber version of a slider. Like, it's just throw a slider instead, and that's what he does, really. But it feels like the sweeper is going to be the key here, because Atlanta's got some lefties with some pop. Feels like that's going to be the key to this matchup, to getting Jeffrey Springs. He likes to use it. It's his primary put-away pitch. So if you are a lefty, that is what he's trying to end the at-bat on. More so than the 4-seamer, more so than the slider. He's trying to throw the sweeper to you late, take it out of the box, because when you have 2 strikes, you've got to swing. It's like tied for second best whiff rate in his arsenal with the slider, but it leads in put away rate because like that is what he uses to get out of jams. That is what he uses to finish at bats. So if Atlanta's lefties can be disciplined against that sweeper, and if the righties can be disciplined against the slider, that's going to be the key to getting Jeffrey Springs. Now, as we've seen from this Braves offense, easier said than done. We've seen them so many times just not be able to lay off of those outside pitches. We've seen them miss hittable pitches, swing over a slider out of the zone, swing at a sweeper that's in the opposite batter's box. The question is going to be, can they do it? I don't know. Even if they make contact with the sweeper, again, they're not going to do very well off of it. There have been 8 of them put into play. 1 double, and that's it. On 8 of them put into play this season. Again, 091 batting average, 182 slug, and a WOBA of 115. It is a very, very effective pitch that I think the big difference here is thankfully he doesn't use it as much as he probably should. Because, again, you usually load up on righties to face a lefty starter. But Atlanta's got some lefties that aren't going to come out of the lineup. And I definitely do think that's where you can get something off of Jeffrey Springs. Let's see if the Braves are actually able to do it. All right, so I wrote a big piece this morning about the MLB Draft and Atlanta's talent acquisition system in general, and how I don't think they've done it right. Let's get into the details on that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby. I want to talk about some of Atlanta's struggles with talent acquisition this year, because the farm system, as we talked about on the show and I wrote about last week, the farm system has not been able to provide the starting pitching that is pretty much your single focus in the draft for the last 6 years. You haven't been able to get that starting pitching reinforcements from the draft this year. So I still think they're not approaching this right. And there's been some new research that's come out recently. Again, the piece, bravestoday.com, it's called, if you're looking for it on the main page, the Braves have the wrong blueprint for building a farm system. It's right there at the top of the homepage. But the things that I think Atlanta's doing wrong, they're paying for the wrong players, and they're doing it at the wrong positions, which feels like a lot, and it is. And so let me explain what I'm talking about in, again, simpler versions. We've got a lot longer version of this on the newsletter. Everybody at this point knows what Atlanta is all about when it comes to player acquisition. In the MLB Draft, Atlanta adds pitchers early, and they add hitters late. And that's backwards from a lot of MLB teams. A lot of MLB teams either go hitters early or a blend of hitters and pitchers early, and they grab a lot of senior signs and pitchers later on day 2, and then in the back half of the draft to fill out a minor league system. Atlanta does it backwards. And I'm not saying necessarily that's good or bad. I'm just acknowledging that's what they do. They have a preference for college arms over high school arms. They will go the high school route from time to time. They always try to get somebody under slot, rounds 3, 4, 5, something like that. Sometimes that's a position player. Sometimes that's a pitcher. And then they're always taking a swing or two at a prep position player somewhere late. Maybe it's the 20th round. Maybe it's the 10th round. Or I'm sorry, the 11th round. Because if you don't sign them, you don't lose bonus pool money. And then in international free agency, Atlanta likes to, and this has been a recent development because they were locked out of the market for so long, but they like to be at the top of the market for somebody big. They want to spend a bunch of money on one of the top prospects in international free agency, and then they supplement a little bit later a couple upside players that are maybe 6-figure bonuses, $100,000, $200,000, and then they fill out the rest of the class with a handful of cheap 4- and 5-figure guys. And I don't think that they've been approaching this the right way. Okay, some of the more recent research, and there's a Substack called Down on the Farm. I've known those guys for a couple of years. I used to talk about them back when I had a prospect podcast over with Locked On. They did some research recently about for international free agency, the correlation, if there was one, between the bonus amounts and the WAR those players produce in MLB. And the idea here is they were trying to answer, are you looking for quality or quantity? What is a better strategy? And Atlanta is very clearly going with quality. If you are using the size of the bonus in international free agency as a proxy for player quality, then Atlanta's going with quality over quantity. Their research showed that international free agency is, in essence, a crapshoot. Sometimes the big bonus guys work out. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. Often they don't. And so like Juan Soto, 2015, $1.5 million. Ronald Acuna Jr. in 2014, $100,000. Ellie De La Cruz in 2018, $65,000. Andy Pages of the Dodgers was a candidate to be an All-Star this year, $300,000 in 2017. Ceddanne Rafael of the Red Sox, $10,000 in 2017. He was snubbed for the All-Star game as well. The big dollar amounts from a sheer war those players generate in the majors, there's very little correlation between the size of the bonus and the likelihood that player makes the majors and is a positive contributor. And so the way you should be approaching international free agency, and we see some teams do this. I think the Giants do this. I think the Tigers do this. The Yankees do this. Yes, the Yankees gave $5 million to Jason Dominguez in 2019, and he's in the majors, and he's performing. He's a pretty decent left fielder. But they have multiple they have multiple teams in the Dominican Summer League. I believe the Yankees, like one of them's called Yankees and one of them's called Bronx. Like DSL Yankees, DSL Bronx, right? The Giants, if I remember right, have DSL Orange and DSL Black. I think the Tigers just have like Tigers 1, Tigers 2 or whatever. But the point is, they are going with quantity. They understand this is a lottery, and you are trying to get as many lottery tickets as you can, because sometimes the guy's going to pan out, and sometimes he's not. Atlanta's number one international prospect right now in the system, from a lot of people that I've talked to, is shortstop John Gill. He got like a 6-figure bonus, but in that same class, Luis Guanipa got $2.5 million. And the best prospect out of that class and in the entire system for internationals right now is John Gill, not Luis Guanipa. And so Atlanta's already behind the 8 ball on the position players that they get there, because that's their strategy. Go in for one of the top guys in international free agency and then supplement around him with some decent places, right? The right-hander, Roddy Reyes, that throws 103. That's a great example of a guy that they supplemented with around their big sign of outfielder Diego Torres. Okay. But in the draft, it's been very heavy pitching early. And the issue with that is, unlike in international free agency, where the money you spend on bonuses does not correlate towards future production, towards expected future production, in the MLB draft for position players, it does. It's not a universal rule. There have been highly drafted players that did not work out. Joey Bart, Henry Davis, 2 catchers. That was a coincidence there. But for the most part, the more you spend on position players in the draft, usually the better return you are going to get on the field in the majors from a WAR perspective. But if you wait to draft a position player till the 4th or 5th round every year, you're minimizing the return you can get. And the issue for the Braves right now is all of those first round picks they've made at pitcher recently, none of them are in the majors. Half of them aren't even with the organization anymore. Some of them are in baseball. They're in the majors with other teams. But Atlanta's not gotten the return on the pitchers in the first round on the field in Atlanta. And this draft, more so than any other draft we've had since 2020, this is not the draft to stick with that insistence on getting a college pitcher or a pitcher early. This is the draft to go after position players heavily. This research that these folks did, again, Down on the Farm is the Substack. I've been reading it for years. I pay for it. It's fantastic there. They have even been able to narrow down every additional $100,000 bonus or $100,000 in bonus in the MLB draft results, and they identified the amount of additional WAR that team is expected to receive. Again, doesn't happen all the time. But there is a direct correlation between drafting position players high and getting returns in the majors from those players. And Atlanta doesn't do it. And then the other issue that I have, and I've complained about this on the show before, the other issue that I have is there is a very, very strong correlation between drafting catchers, shortstops, and center fielders, and those players being more likely to make the majors than other positions. And Atlanta seems to not want to jump straight into grabbing shortstops. Like, they'll draft Isaiah Drake out of high school, the outfielder. He's a center fielder. He's incredibly fast. He's a center fielder. But Atlanta's not been super aggressive at getting shortstops. Now, there are some. 2021, they took Cal Conley out of Texas Tech in the 4th round, Luke Waddell out of Georgia Tech in the 5th. Waddell's in AAA, I believe, and I think Conley's in AA. Maybe they moved some guys around recently, but that's where they were last I remember looking at them. But what Atlanta likes to do, in 2022, you saw this with 2 early picks. Nacho Alvarez was a college third baseman that they tried to move to shortstop, and we all know by now, it didn't work out. He's not a shortstop. He's not an option to replace Nick Allen. We're talking about him being an option to replace Ozzie Albies, maybe, and we need to play him to see if he actually is or not. They drafted David McCabe as a third baseman when he played first base in college. Atlanta's trying to move guys up the defensive spectrum to get additional value out of those picks. And my assumption is they're doing that because they're trying to make up for the fact that they didn't invest in the position player until the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th round or whatever. And so they're trying to say, hey, if we can go and spend 5th round money and draft a third baseman that can stick at shortstop, that's a better use of our money than trying to spend 3rd round money for a shortstop. That's what they're trying to do here. But it has been proven, the numbers show that getting a guy at shortstop, at center field, or at catcher makes them much more likely to make the majors because they have more fallback options defensively. Just about every strong infield defender in baseball who is right-handed at one point in time or another played shortstop. Austin Riley played shortstop when he was a kid. He was drafted as a third baseman, but he played shortstop when he was younger. The San Diego Padres rolled out like a 7 shortstop lineup one day last year. Jake Cronenworth was at second. He's a former shortstop. Or, no, he was at first, former shortstop. Xander Bogaerts at second, former shortstop. Ha-Sung Kim was at short, actual shortstop. Manny Machado at third. He was a former shortstop. Jackson Merrill in center. He was a former shortstop. Fernando Tatis Jr. in right field. He was a former shortstop. And believe it or not, Luis Ariz, at one point in time in his life, played shortstop. He was a kid. Like, I think when he was an international free agent, there were some teams that looked at him maybe as a shortstop. But he also, at some point in time, played shortstop in baseball. They had like 7 shortstops in the lineup at the same time. Obviously, they didn't all still play shortstop. But the point is, if you're a shortstop, you have so many more options to move down the defensive spectrum and still be a positive contributor. There's actually a correlation between infield defense, like defensive metrics of quality, and did this guy used to be a shortstop? There is a legitimate correlation. If a guy is a positive infield defender, there is a better than 50% chance that he used to be a shortstop at some point, some level of his life. Right? I think what I'm saying is don't ever draft first baseman. Probably don't draft a bunch of third basemen. Don't draft a corner outfielder. You draft center fielders, you draft shortstops, and you draft catchers. Because catchers can move to first base, catchers can be DHs. Some of the ones who are super athletic, we've seen some catchers move to the outfield. Dalton Varsho went from a catcher to a Gold Glove caliber center fielder. Hunter Goodman in Colorado is an all-star now, but last year, he's an all-star at catcher, but last year for Colorado, he played left, he played right, he played first. Like, you have options for a catcher. In this draft, Ike Irish is considered the best college hitter there is. He's a catcher who can play right field. You've got defensive options. He can play first base too. I watched him do it in some games. He's not great at it, but he could be okay there. Getting a shortstop over a second baseman or a third baseman just gives you so many more options. If that shortstop doesn't have a good enough arm, he can kick into second. If he doesn't have great range, he can kick to third. If he doesn't have good hands, you can kick him out to the grass and have him do something out there. And what Atlanta needs to do in this draft, more so than any others, is grab some shortstops early, pay the bonuses, pay the money to get these shortstops into the system for an infusion of talent, one, but options down the road, right? Jurickson Profar, after this year, he's got 2 years left. You're probably not going to want to re-sign him. Well, guess what? If you have a shortstop that's not hacking it in the dirt, you can send him to the outfield. Eddie Rosario used to be an infielder. Jurickson Profar used to be an infielder. Eli White was an infielder in college. Like, there's so many examples of guys who have done that. What you don't see outside of Mookie Betts, and that's really about it, is a outfielder move into shortstop. That's the only one I can think of recently. Matter of fact, the only non-shortstop who has played shortstop for any significant length of time in the majors recently that I can think of is Paul DeJong. That's it. And he's not good defensively anymore. The Braves have an opportunity here. This farm system needs an infusion of talent. They need position player talent. They need better hitters overall. But what they need is for the Braves to give themselves as many options as possible going forward. Because a good shortstop, a two-way shortstop, I'm going to go on a limb and say is the most valuable asset in baseball. Think about all of these good teams across the league. Almost all of them have a very good two-way shortstop. Very few of them are making it work with nothing. And think about all the good shortstops that have gone to free agency recently. Atlanta got priced out of Dansby Swanson. They weren't going to be able to sign Willy Adames. All of those guys were pricey because if a guy can both defend and hit at shortstop, he gets paid a ton of money. And because of that reason, it is very hard to upgrade that position in free agency without giving out one of those massive contracts. So draft a bunch of them. Because even if the guy doesn't work out at short, guess what? He might work out at third. He might work out at second. He might be your next center fielder or right fielder or left fielder. Get the shortstops. When in doubt, draft the shortstop. If you have two guys graded exactly the same on your board, the tiebreaker should be which one's a shortstop. For the love of goodness, please add some shortstops to this organization. Nick Allen's a great defender. I love Nick Allen. I am 100% on board the Nick Allen train. But I think we all know this team can hit a different level if they can have a two-way threat at shortstop. Think about the teams that have won the World Series. Mookie Betts wasn't a great defender at short, but he's a fantastic hitter. Corey Seager. They won the World Series. We won it with Dansby Swanson. Think about the teams that have won. The Astros had Carlos Correa. They had Jeremy Pena after that. Think about the teams that have won World Series. Almost all of them have a really good shortstop. Atlanta deserves to be in that group too. This has been Braves Today for Tuesday, July 8th. Do me a favor, if you're listening on audio, leave a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, YouTube Music. If you're watching on YouTube, one, thank you for being here. I didn't think that last segment was going to take 17 minutes or so, but I ended up being more passionate about this than I expected. Reminder, we're going to have our live show again on Friday, so hit the notification bell so you know when we go live on Friday. We're going to take your questions, all that fun stuff. But until next time, this has been Braves Today.